If you're looking forward to a little 49ers football, you got yourself a wait coming up on Sunday because they don't take the stage until Sunday Night Football. The stage is Levi Stadium. The actors, 49ers against the Los Angeles Chargers, who, again, are caught in between the team that they might be one day and the team that they can't stop being due to injury, due to the uniforms. I don't know. To get to know a better idea of who the Chargers are, we're very happy to bring in Daniel Jeremiah, who just crushes coverage on NFL Network. To me, he is the rising star of NFL Draft Day over the last 3 or 4 years. His Move the Sticks podcast, incredibly popular. He also is part of the Chargers Radio Network, which means he knows them very well. Thank you for joining us here on Damon and Ratto. Daniel Jeremiah, how are you, man? It's been a long time.
I'm doing great, buddy. Great to hear your voice.
Good to have you on. Thanks so much for joining us today. So, give me a thumbnail sketch. Is this a team that, in your eyes, is overachieving due to the rampant injuries to key players, or are they in some way, in your eyes, still underachieving because your expectations are set that high for a team that, was really close to being a playoff team last year and was billed this year as one of the teams in the NFL officially on the come?
Well, I think if you look at the scenario and all the injuries that have taken place, I think you have to be happy. I think one thing everybody would agree on, if you've watched this team, is that it's ugly. They win ugly and they lose ugly. It's not been pretty. It has not been easy on the eyes at times, but they're somehow sitting here at 5-3, very much alive in both the division as well as just, if that doesn't go their way, just getting into the tournament. I think there was a point during the Jacksonville game where they were getting clobbered, and I looked down on the field, and we were being kind of hard on them during the broadcast, and it kind of just it set in, and I said, well, Matt Money Smith's our play-by-play guy. I said, Money, you're down an all-pro tackle is not out there, and Rashawn Slater. Your all-pro center and Corey Lindsley's not playing. Keenan Allen, your perennial Pro Bowl receiver, he's not out there. You got Joey Bosa, one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL. He ain't playing. And then J.C. Jackson, your $20 million corner you got in free agency, he ain't playing. So I don't know, kind of what the expectations should be when you consider that's just not the team, that you thought they were going to have this year. And on top of that, your quarterback has, broken rib cartilage that he's been playing with for the whole season.
How much, when you list all those injuries, can you play a hypothetical game in which, if only half those guys were hurt, would their record be 6-2? Would they be 7-1? How good would they be?
Well, I think that you can maybe say an extra win in there, but look, there's no hiding the fact they still have issues, and defensively, particularly against the run, and those aren't all going to be solved just by getting Joey Bosa out there. So it's still, an area they got to have to improve, or they're, if they do get into the playoffs, they're not going to go very far. So they've got to become more physical. And boy, what a test for what the 49ers are getting ready to throw at them on Sunday night. After last week of the Atlanta Falcon game where the Chargers were able to get a win, but the Falcons still ran the ball really, really well. You can imagine the 49ers are going to get off us running the ball on Sunday night.
What are the questions that you still have about Justin Herbert, who has pretty much answered any and all young questions you might have about a new quarterback finding his way around the NFL? I mean, everything about him looks like the real deal here. And if the team ever gets right around him, I mean, he's really going to be something. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, he's had his first 2 years were unbelievable. And then this year, it hasn't been quite the same, but I think when you factor in all the injuries we discussed, including his, I think you can kind of explain it. I think he became, he lost a little bit of his aggressiveness because of all these different, new pieces that they had. I thought he was a little bit cautious, which is not the way he played the last 2 years. But I thought last week he started to come out of that and was pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. So it's not an easy spot to be in when you look out there and you don't see Mike Williams and you don't see Keenan Allen and even Donald Parham, the tight end they were going to, have a big role for this year. He's not out there as well. So he's had to, find a way to try and make it work, and Austin Eckler's really helped catching balls out of the backfield. But, yeah, he's look, there's the discussion of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he would be on the first hand. I mean, he's one of those top 5 guys for sure right now.
Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, Chargers radio color analyst. Austin Eckler is, I think, maybe, I don't know if there's anyone in the NFL who is as under the radar and involved in everything as he is all at the same time. Like, Austin Eckler is one of the 20 best players in this league. And if you look at him some Sundays, you'd say, is this guy maybe even in the top 10? Yet nobody's sitting around talking about Austin Eckler, Monday through Saturday.
True story. I actually called a buddy with the Chargers because I was watching, I won't name the network, but it wasn't the one I work for. Over the summer, they were doing a segment called Breakout Candidates. And somebody said on there that Austin Eckler was his breakout candidate. He had 20 touchdowns last year. What is he up to do breakouts? You got to score 40? I just laughed my butt off when I heard that, because you're right. He's doing things not many people have done in the history of this game. So he's very much an under the radar player, and he is. You'll see it. I mean, the amount of touches that they're going to need from him in this game to pull this out is going to be pretty big. And they spread them out pretty evenly between carries and catches.
Would they be 7-1 if he had 40 touchdowns?
Yeah, maybe. I think they might be undefeated if he get 40 touchdowns. Yeah.
Brandon Staley was an immediate genius, and then he became sort of an immediate idiot based on what the public views of him. Where is he as a coach in your eyes? Because you've seen him on good days and bad. Where does he sort of fit in terms of, guys in their third year and how far along he should be?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think he's a really, really sharp guy. And I think he's admitted mistakes that he's made, and he's learned. He's young, and he's still kind of growing and evolving. I think with the aggressiveness on fourth down that we saw last year, that got curbed a little bit this year, I think, because, they just don't have the health on offense to provide that confidence to be quite as aggressive. I still think that's in his nature to want to be, really, really ultra aggressive, but they haven't been able to do that this year because of all the injuries. So I think he's a good coach. I think he'd be the first one to tell you, with his background on the defensive side of the ball, they've got to start playing better there, particularly against the run. And they tried out some new things last week as the game went along. They kind of played with more of a 4 defensive tackle front. Was kind of new for them, and then stood up Khalil Mack on one side, and they used Derwin James as kind of their big nickel, and that seemed to work. So they're trying different things out to try and figure out how to get this run defense fixed. And last week it looked like about halfway through that game they might have stumbled onto something.
Meanwhile, we got the San Francisco 49ers, Daniel, coming off of a bye week, and they just had great success in Game 2 with their brand new toy that is Christian McCaffrey. What'd you think of the trade when it went down? And based on early returns, what do you think becomes of this offense?
Well, I loved it. I loved the trade because of how they'd be able to use McCaffrey. He wasn't going to have to be somebody that's going to carry the ball a zillion times, but really able to use him creatively and get him in space and get him in the passing game. And you knew Kyle would know exactly what to do with him. And when you watched the first game that he played, I charted it, and I thought there were 7 or 8 opportunities that they missed with him in the passing game, where he was open in space and Garoppolo could have given him the ball, let him do something with it. And then you saw week number 2 that already got corrected. They got the ball in his hands a bunch, and he kind of single-handedly dominated that football game on the offensive side. So now you get Debo back in the mix. Juszczyk, I mean, they are going to be a handful. I went to this morning. I was watching all their explosive plays, so all their pass plays, over 15 yards. And, I mean, you watch how, you see it, and you see how physical these guys are after the catch when they're all out there, and now you're going to throw Christian McCaffrey into the middle of that? It's going to be a major, major challenge for defenses.
This is a completely unfair question, so I revel in it. As you look at the AFC standings, on the assumption that Kansas City holds on to win the division, what is the likelihood in your mind that the Chargers, Jets, or Miami, how do you think that falls there? And how close do you think New England and Cincinnati really are?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you right now, I know the schedule's tough for the Jets, but I really believe in their defensive front and all the depth that they have. The secondary, I mean, the defense overall is excellent. So I think they're going to be there. They're 6-3 right now. I think Miami, with how explosive they are, they're going to be there as well. To me, if you're the Chargers, I think you're kind of looking at, man, you're still in the race for the division. But if you can't get that, I think you're trying to knock out and be better than the second team in the AFC North, which looks like it's going to be Cincinnati.
Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network here on 95.7 The Game. And again, not just a 49ers Chargers questions here, but a broader question in a league that literally tipped its entire rule book to the offensive side of the conversation. Team after team going out of their way to hire an offensive-minded head coach. Why is defense once again ruling the day in this league?
Well, they've kind of stumbled on something, which is kind of that bend but don't break, too high safety shell, limit explosive plays. I think that's a big part of it when you think about the schematics of it, and kind of defenses willing to die a slow death, but they're not going to give up big plays. It's not happening, which is a bummer to watch because that's what makes the game so exciting. And the other thing I would just say is that if you look over the last 10 years or so, the talent that's come into this league on the defensive line versus the offensive line is completely lopsided. So even if you want to push the ball vertically down the field, these teams just simply don't have the time to do it because they're overmatched up front. And then we've had a bunch of injuries on top of that. So I think all that kind of goes into the stew, and that's how you get some of these lower scoring games. And, it's been a while since anybody said that some of the excitement's missing, but I think it's true. It's hopefully going to get better as the season goes along, but I don't see how it could get much better considering those factors.
How much of the defense do you think, in general, is simply a matter of if you give a defensive coordinator enough time that he can adjust to nearly anything, and that if you give a general manager enough time to allow that defensive coordinator to have the kind of players to make those adjustments, that the pendulum is always going to swing harder toward defense than offense?
Yeah, I also think, though, you're going to see the offenses correct. And, I think what we might have is, these teams are going to say, okay, well, we're going to get bigger on offense, and we're going to play in more, 13 personnel with 3 tight ends. And if you're going to play your safeties like that, we're going to come out and we're just going to try and beat you up and run the ball down your throats and see if we can't force you to change the way that you play. But I think offense has always made adjustments. When defense gets a leg up, then there'll be some innovation that's coming our way, and that's one I could see happening as we actually see this league kind of go back a little bit to its old school roots, and we see some of these teams embrace the run game.
Let's end where we kind of began, talking about the Chargers, how they're built, how they're constructed. We were very familiar with Khalil Mack in the Bay Area. He took the Raiders by storm. He was a part of a trade that looked funny when it happened. I think looks funny in its aftermath. The Raiders couldn't live in a world where you had 2 guys making $20 million. Now that is completely normal. I mean, Gruden got that one wrong. Having said all that, Khalil Mack shows up in Chicago. Boy, there'd be games he'd flash, and there'd be months when he would disappear. What is Khalil Mack now in your eyes?
Well, he was off to a heck of a start, and he's been very consistent. He's been their best, edge setter, run defender. That's who he's always been during his career. But he was off to a really good start rushing the passer when Joey Bosa was healthy on the other side. Unfortunately, when Bosa went out, the attention kind of went his way, and it was kind of like he's been at times throughout his career where he's the one-man band, So he's drawn a lot of attention that way. But, last week was kind of a great example. He just rips the ball out of Drake London's hands and returns it about 40 yards. So he still finds a way to impact the game, even when he's drawn a lot of attention as a pass rusher. So he's never been one, he had a year here or there, but he's never been one that was going to be a 15, 16 sack guy, but he was going to be around 10 to 12 sacks, be a dominant run defender, and, he plays with such great effort. So I think he's still that guy.
I bet you he took a lot of lunch money in middle school. Like he just said, rookie, you give me that football. That was a hell of a play. It was nice catching up with you, Daniel. Thank you very much for giving us some of your time, and We got a hell of a game coming up Sunday Night Football. Should be really, really interesting. Appreciate your stopping on by today.
I appreciate your time, and whenever you want to block out a full hour just so we can talk about my Padres beating the Dodgers in the playoffs, I figured we could both have that discussion, and the listeners would enjoy it.
And you're available Monday then?
Yeah. If we get a boring football game, we'll be all over the Hate on the Dodgers show with you. We'll bring you up there. We might even sneak in a little love for the 2-0 Mike Woodson Hoosiers.
Hey, there we go. Let's go. Here we go.
Front court, baby. They got one. Thank you, Daniel.
Love it. See you, bud.
There he is, Daniel Jeremiah here on 95.7 The Game.